it is. This is what you've been looking for. Devotions with Brother Aaron. Boy, I sure am glad that you are here with us today. I've entitled today's devotion, In It for the Long Haul. 2 Samuel 3:1 states, Now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. None of us like war, much less a long war. We want to address an issue, solve it immediately, and move on. Unfortunately, that is not always the case. Change, if it comes at all, usually doesn't come quickly. The Bible cites this in Mark 9:28 through 29 regarding the disciples' inability to remove a stubborn demon. The passage says, And when he was come into the house, the disciples asked him privately, Why could not we cast him out? And he said unto them, This kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. In other words, to see the success they desired required them to commit to the long haul of the process. 15 years passed from the time King David was anointed to be king until he actually became king. It wasn't instantaneous. He had a lot to experience. Why? Because God had to transform David from a shepherd to a king. God had to bring David from a point where it must have seemed to him as if he couldn't win to a point where he knew he couldn't lose. That took a while, and it still does today. Let me throw a quick aside in right here. Do you know the difference between an amateur and a professional? An amateur practices until he gets something right. A professional practices until he or she cannot get it wrong. Wow. And for some of us who are on the hard-headed side, it takes a little longer. However, somewhere along the way, as 2 Samuel 3:1 states, David reached a tipping point, a point where he was no longer the weaker house, but rather the stronger. Why? Because he had committed to the long haul of the process. Herein is an encouraging word to all who are hearing this devotion right now. As you seek success in your life, career, marriage, family, ministry, or a myriad of other things, and perhaps things aren't going so well for you, the very first thing you need to do is to commit or recommit to the long haul of the process. Soon enough, you'll reach a tipping point, and you'll no longer be the weaker house. You'll be stronger than any obstacle that crosses your path and tries to stop you from reaching your goal. Sometimes, as with David in the opening passage I shared with you, the only way to win is to outlast whoever and whatever stands between you and success. I read a story about some boxers. Buster Douglas was to fight Iron Mike Tyson. Up to that point in his career, Iron Mike would walk into the ring and, in the first round or two, knock out his opponent. Knowing this, Buster Douglas made it his mission to make sure the fight went the distance. Iron Mike didn't train for this. As the fight proceeded, Buster Douglas got stronger and Iron Mike grew weaker. Buster Douglas won. And in the Thrilla in Manila, in sweltering 100-plus degree heat and humidity, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier engaged in what is arguably the greatest professional boxing match ever. It is reported that during the fight, both men wanted to quit. At one point, Ali begged his corner to cut off his gloves. His corner refused. Evidently, they saw something in Ali that he didn't see in himself at that moment. In the 14th round, Joe Frazier's corner refused to allow him to continue. Ali won the fight. How? By outlasting Joe Frazier. And in the process, he went from thinking he couldn't win to thinking he couldn't lose. Again, as you seek success in your life, career, marriage, family, ministry, or a myriad of other things, and perhaps things aren't going so well for you, the very first thing you need to do is commit or recommit to the long haul of the process. Soon enough, you'll reach a tipping point, and you'll no longer be the weaker house. You'll be stronger than any obstacle that crosses your path and tries to stop you from reaching your goal. And the very best part is, somewhere in the process, you'll move from thinking you cannot win to thinking you cannot lose. Amen. Lord, my simple prayer today is that you would help every listener to commit to the long haul of the process of being and becoming a Christian. Help us not to merely prepare to the point we can get our calling in you right, but help us prepare until we cannot get it wrong. Help us to stop thinking we cannot win and begin to believe we cannot lose. Help us commit to be in it for the long haul. And I ask this in your name, amen.